Hello everyone, Useful Engine 11 here, back again for another custom video, and this custom video is more exciting than, well, most, because this is the 100th custom video. That's right, everyone. For pretty much 5 years now, I have been making customs, and for my first custom, the Sigurd of Arsdale, even though she didn't look as good then, she looks better now, as you can see here, but from the Sigurd of Arsdale to these customs we're going to be taking a look at today, it's hard to believe I've made 100 custom videos. So, without further ado, let's jump into these customs. Yeah, that's right, custom. You're getting 4 for the price of 1 video. Here we got some mid-Sodor engines. Here we'll be taking a look at Stanley, Albert, Jim, and Tim. So, without further ado, let's get into this. Now, as much as I'd go in the order that when I made them, I think we're going to go by number. So first, let's start off with Stanley. Now, in the Railway series, Stanley is the number 2 engine, and he's an American engine, actually. And, he served during the war, but then he was sold off to the Mid-Sodor Railway. But with him being an American engine, he wasn't gauged right. So he would always, sway side to side and would always constantly derail. Duke would always tell him to be careful, but this is all he would say.
"Listen, bud," he drawled. "In the States, we don't care a dime for a few spills. We do here," I said. But he just laughed.
It wasn't long before the manager would take away his wheels and turn them into something useful at last.
What? Why? What did he do? He turned him into a pumping engine. That's what. He's still there, behind our shed.
And ever since then, Stanley had been a pumping engine, and was moved to Kasnehauen when the mines were flooding. But when they did flood, I think it's sad to assume that Stanley kind of died in that. But yeah. So, you guys may be wondering, why did I make Stanley if I already have Smudger? Well, I will explain that. But for now, let's actually get into the custom. Also, another tidbit of information. When the Reverend Audrey made his Stanley model, well, not only was Stanley's story based off of his model, but also that his model had tram skirts on one side and was painted in wartime black. Kind of unique, honestly, for, different headcanons. Anyway, Stanley was the most complex model I had ever made. And of course, just so much went into him. Okay, how do I explain this? He uses so many parts from other different engines and source materials. His chassis comes from Fearless Freddy. His cab comes from a wooden railway Timothy. His boiler is a dowel rod. His tanks are, scratch built out of cardboard. His funnel and domes are made out of some plastic bits. I had to add some wood and some cardboard underneath here. And Stanley can also be removed from his chassis so he can be a pumping engine, So yeah, a lot of bits go into here, and yeah, Stanley was complex, but he was fun to make nonetheless. Anyway, I spray painted his model in a type of red spray paint, and I painted, all the black detailing on him, also did his name on the side in gold, and of course I think I did his name in toothpick with black paint. Same goes for the number too. And of course his backside looks great, and I just love the way he looked. And of course, the reason I didn't decide to use a Freddy model, for you all asking that, is because I actually wanted to make Stanley look like a Baldwin locomotive, so that's kind of why I went ahead and did all this. Also, his face comes from a wooden railway bill or bend. I wasn't totally sure what face I wanted to use for him, but I decided to go ahead and take inspiration from the Sudrick Legends custom of Stanley. So that's kind of where the face comes from. Now, time to answer the question I posed at the beginning. Useful, why did you make Stanley when I have Smudger? Well, that's simple. I think they could both honestly coexist. Obviously, Smudger is the, number 2 in the TV series, and Stanley's the number 2 in the Railway series. But there have been many instances where I've seen them coexist. Like, I guess one example is Enterprising Engines. Even though they haven't really interacted much, we see Stanley in the background, but it's obvious EE93 is all for Smudger here. But yeah, that's just one example I'm going off of. So yeah, I think they can coexist. So anyway, that's pretty much up with Stanley. So let's move on to Albert. Now, funnily enough, while Stanley was the second to last custom mid-Sodor engine I made, Albert was actually the last mid-Sodor engine I made. Technically, if I was showing off all these customs far apart from each other, Albert wouldn't get his custom video until a year, and yeah, he wouldn't be shown off for a year. But obviously, with this being my newest custom, honestly, I'm very proud of him. Even though this custom was a bit rushed in a way, it's not that bad. Now, unlike Stanley, who was actually in the Railway series, Albert, Jim, Tim, and many other mid-Sodor engines were mentioned only in the Aldous Sodor's People, Histories, and Railways. Albert has gone through a lot, honestly, with his modeling career. The Reverend Audrey had built 5 models. 5 models of Albert! And, gosh, I guess that gives the creator more freedom, but my goodness, I guess he just couldn't stick to one and roll with it. Then again, the first version doesn't look the best. The second version looks better, but, you know, it's alright. But the Mark II rebuilt, obviously, you know, the predecessors to the Mark I and the Mark II. This is the Mark II rebuilt, which is pretty much what I based this model off of. However, there's this other Albert model that was painted maroon, and I think was made out of the spare twin of Alfred. Of course, Luke didn't confirm that, honestly. And then the final version, the Mark III, which is technically the definitive version of Albert, but I decided to be a little bit different here and decided to just stick with the Hughes Falcon version of Albert. I'll probably explain more on that some other day. Anyways, let's get into this custom. Now, sadly, I wasn't really taking too many pictures during this process. I was just mostly wanting to get the model done. But here's a picture of Albert halfway done, and then here's another picture of him, with him pretty much all done. By the way, in this photo, he used a James face, as the original face was going to be a Donald face, but sadly I lost it, and I don't know where in the world it went. But then, you know, obviously I contacted JP, also known as Abbey Road Fan, on Twitter, and he commented on my Instagram post saying that he had a spare Douglas that he wanted to get rid of, and I decided to take him up on that offer, so I purchased it from him along with a few other things, and yeah. So now Albert is finally complete, and he looks very good. Even though with him being my newest custom, he certainly looks great. Now, next we're going to move on to Jim, but here's the thing. I technically have shown off Jim a few times. Now, if you guys remember back in 2020, I've already made a custom video on him. This is what Jim used to look like before I updated him a couple years later. And here's what he looked like when I updated him a couple years later. Now, not much has changed with Jim, but it just feels wrong to leave him out of this custom video, honestly. Obviously, Jim is the oldest model, and I'm pretty sure you guys could probably tell. The only thing I've really added to him were these boxes here. I don't know what they're really for, but they're on the Reverend's model, so I decided to go ahead and add them. Other than that, not too much other than those, I guess. I do want to honestly update Jim one last time to make him look up to par with the other engines, but for now, he still holds up, and I'm very happy with him still. Especially with him being my oldest model of the mid-Sodor gang here. Now, finally, here, sadly, we have last, but at least he looks great, Tim. Now, unlike the other models, Tim was actually inspired by the model that Stephen Garcia 118 and Turtles and Thomas made for Enterprising Engine 93, which was most prominent when seen in his original story written by Chase Seed, Tim Comes to Terms. And I will say, the model looks great, so that's what gave me the inspiration here. And of course, yeah, it's like the Fred model that I've made that was inspired by Hero the Japanese Train. This model was definitely inspired by those two who made the model for Matt. Anyway, let's get into it. Now, this model is a combination of a Wooden Railway Timothy and a Fearless Freddy. Keep in mind, the cab that was on this Wooden Railway Timothy went to my Stanley model. Anyway, I cut Freddy's body down to size. I also cut off Timothy's smoke box, keeping the face on, as that was the face I was going to use, moving it back, and also gluing the model down. And of course, I painted it all in a gloss black, and also added all the details with gray, gold, and red. Now there's this little area right here. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but Matt represented that with a Lego bit, and I decided to use this bit from a little crane that I had that was, broken, so I took this piece off it. It used to be silver, but then of course I colored it bronze to match, you see. So yeah, Tim is the smallest custom compared to someone like Stanley or Albert or Jim, but nonetheless, Tim looks great, and I could not be happier with him, honestly. Overall, these mid-Sodor customs look great. Some are older and some are newer, but all the same, it's nice to finally know that my mid-Sodor collection is finally growing. Now, if you're wondering if I'm going to make the other mid-Sodor engines like Jerry, Atlas, Alfred, Jennings, and John, then yes, I will make them. Who knows, maybe I'll make them for the 200th custom video one day. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I definitely want to make them in the future. Now, if I had to give out awards to these guys, if I had to give out the award for who would be my favorite, it'd have to be Stanley. But if I had to give the award out to someone who looks the best, it'd have to be Albert. But if I had to give an award to this custom that was inspired by another creator, that would have to go to Tim. And if I was to give out the award of a model that used to look old but was made new again, I'd definitely give that award to Jim. So guys, I hope you all enjoyed the 100th custom video, and not to mention, this custom video is much longer than others, so you're technically getting your viewers' worth out of this one. Anyways guys, I hope you all enjoyed watching this custom video. Without further ado, Useful Engine 11 signing out. Take care everyone, and I'll see you all next time.